You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you as the Braves wrapped up their road trip. They wrapped up their series in Milwaukee. They did it on a winning note. They did it with a lot of power, and it gives them some momentum heading into a 7-game homestand that's coming up. And I don't know, we're going to get to it eventually, but is the next couple of months going to be one of these patented second-half surges for the Atlanta Braves? We'll dig into all of that following this 6-2 win over the Milwaukee Brewers this afternoon. Before we get started, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Jake, I feel like as we look back on this road trip, not just the series in Milwaukee, but the road trip in general, it could not have started out in a much worse fashion for the Atlanta Braves. By the time it was said and done, this ended up being quite the role reversal for Atlanta after winning 4 of the final 5 games and coming home with a winning road trip and a chance to maybe rack up some more wins against a Miami Marlins club that we may not even recognize.
Yeah, I was interested to see what that's going to look like, but also crazy just what a difference a week can make in baseball. We all were sitting here last week after especially that Thursday game in New York, just thinking about how bad things are. And then a week later, here we are. And now we're suddenly people are starting to talk about the division once again. So might be a little premature for that, but great to see the Braves in the road trip on a high note. Like I said, have a winning road trip.
Yeah, it's certainly important to win as much as you can, win as many series as you can, avoid losing streaks. And that's kind of, I think, something that might stick in the craw of this Braves club here lately is bad time for a 6-game losing streak last week because the Phillies have started to slide a bit. And we'll get into that whole division thing later because the Braves, they can't really worry about what's happening in Philadelphia. They've been trying to figure out what's going on for the Atlanta Braves. And maybe, just maybe, based on some of the results we've seen, the arrival of Jorge Soler, some encouraging signs from a certain Braves slugging first baseman, maybe they are starting to figure some things out. Atlanta's powerful bats erased an early deficit that they were able to take this series from the Brewers after a couple of early runs against Chris Sale. He settled in, but a unique day for Matt Olson and Travis d'Arnaud, first set of Braves teammates in 26 years to hit back-to-back home run twice in the same game. Only the 31st time this has happened since the expansion in 1961, that according to Sarah Langs, who does such a great job pulling a lot of these stats. Only the 3rd time it's happened for Braves teammates since the club moved to Atlanta in 1966. So a lot of different ways to slice this history. I've been to a lot of baseball games, Jake. I'm sure you have too. I'm sure we've watched even more. I don't know how many times I can tell you that I've seen teammates hit back-to-back home runs twice in the same game, but we saw it in Wednesday's win against the Brewers with Matt Olson and Travis d'Arnaud.
Yeah, pretty incredible. The Braves have done it 2 other times, I believe. So I know it has happened. I've probably witnessed it, but I don't quite remember it quite well. Hopefully I will this one because of where these 2 guys are, more specifically Matt Olson and just the season that he's having, and to be able to have a big game like this and see the ball go out again, similar to what he did in New York. It came to back-to-back games, but he had one where he shot a ball opposite field for a home run, and then he pulled a majestic shot. This time he does each of those in one game. So certainly love to see that. d'Arnaud's been really good for a while now. He's been on a hot stretch here for the Atlanta Braves over the past several weeks. Both catchers here in the past couple of weeks since the All-Star break have been really, really good. But yeah, pretty incredible to see. Again, not something that you see every day. 2 guys going back-to-back and doing it in the same game.
Yeah, and beyond the history-making home runs there, Matt Olson, it does seem like he's starting to slug his way out of the valley that he's been in for quite some time. Came into the second half. I mean, if you rewind and maybe go back in the archives and see the last time that we were really trying to dig into, when's Matt Olson going to figure it out, which wasn't that long ago. In the second half, within the first few games, I was crunching these numbers and I'm thinking, Matt Olson's on pace for 21 homers and 71 runs batted in. That just doesn't seem right. Now, all of a sudden, 2 more homers today. He's up to 17 on the year, and it starts to feel like, Jake, and we've known this has been in there, not just for him, but for some other hitters who have underperformed this year. The talent's there. You got to find the results. And hopefully for Matt Olson, with everything he's gone through this year, there's a string of baseball ahead of him that's going to be a little bit better than some of what he is hoping is now behind.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a lot just because he is kind of that key guy because we feel like Riley's gotten going. Ozuna's been there all year, although this might have been one of the worst games of the season for Marcell Ozuna, and the Braves still won. which I think is pretty significant to note. But for Matt Olson, I mean, it's all, very key that he is driving in runs. It's what he's here to do. Hit home runs, to drive in runs, and he just hasn't been doing that. As you said, the numbers to look at and how they project out have just been crazy. And because after what we saw last year and what he's done for his entire career, and it just hasn't been the case this year. And Frenchie talked about it some on the broadcast, even in the Monday game after the 2 home runs in New York. And Matt Olson said, I still don't feel like I'm quite there, even with those home runs. And you saw it early in this series. He's still missing the fastball and just late on it and fouling those pitches back. And that's why it was so key in this game, both of those coming on fastballs. So when he starts to time those up, you're going to see him go on a hot streak like this. And I said it was one of my second half predictions. Hopefully it comes true. I still think he gets to 30 home runs this year. Mm-hmm. I believe in Matt Olson. I believe that power is going to come. Been saying it. He's just been a tick off all year long. And if he can ever get that timing down, whatever mechanical adjustment there that needs to be made, I'm more than confident that he can go on a big home run streak. And again, we've seen 4 now in the past week here. So hopefully this is the beginning of that.
Yeah, and you think about what Matt Olson did last year, and I know this is not last year, but I mean, he's capable of a double-digit home run month. That's certainly something he can do. I mean, in order to get there now, he needs a 6-homer month and a 7-homer month, and he'll be right there because he's at 17 all of a sudden. But the 30 home runs would aesthetically be a very nice milestone for Olson to get back to. He's done it many times in his big league career. You pretty much write that in and permanent marker that you're going to get at least 30 from this guy. But it's just been tough sledding for him. Interesting to note now, the Braves have played their 107th game as of Wednesday. So game 108, mathematically, 2/3 of the way through the season. That's what's happening on Thursday. So it's getting late for the Atlanta Braves. They're in that final stretch, and they're hoping that their best baseball is in front of them, not just Matt Olson, but this entire lineup, this entire offense. Somebody who is happy that this offense was able to do the things it did today, Chris Sale. He was not bad. Gave up the early runs, could have certainly been worse for him. I think he did a good enough job of damage control. He had Pierce Johnson help him out of a 6th-inning jam. But overall, I think this is another example of Chris Sale that if you don't get to him early, you may not get to him at all.
Yeah, first inning has been a bit of a problem for Chris Sale. And I say problem, by his standards, he's given up a run or two here in the first inning of games. But then after that, as you said, he kind of just settles in and really shuts things down from there. And that's exactly what we saw this day. I thought earlier in this start, had trouble commanding the fastball, didn't have trouble throwing it in the strike zone, but not throwing quality strikes with that fastball. He had a situation in that first inning where he was ahead in the count 0-2 and was trying to get the fastball up out of the zone and left it over the middle of the plate, ended up being a sac fly, but he had a chance really to do even more in that inning and get out of that, only allowing the 1 run. He made another mistake with that fastball later in the game and gave up a hit to Jackson Churio, a pitch again that was supposed to be up, left it out over the middle of the plate. But the slider, was there as it typically is for him. I wish they would have gone to that changeup a little bit earlier in that first inning. I don't know that he threw any changeups in that first inning, but you want to save your pitches, obviously third time through, but that's a situation where all those righties, that changeup becomes a really important pitch for him. He did end up throwing it 24 times today, and I thought he threw some really good ones in that. But again, he settles down. He gets in the 6th inning. He's 1 out away from getting through the 6th, and with the Braves scoring in the 7th, would have gotten that 14th win. But as it was, walked the last batter that he faced and doesn't get that win. But just a great job of settling down up to 40 pitches after 2 innings too, and able to still almost get through the 6th inning.
Yeah, he was able to, again, do damage control in a lot of different ways. Now, I wonder sometimes when they do stay away from a pitch in the early going, if there's not a specific part of the game plan that's a reason for that. And occasionally when guys warm up and they start to, see what's kind of working for them in their arsenal, maybe they don't have the feel or the trust for that pitch yet. And you kind of look to get that as you go along. But either way, for Chris Sale, whatever he needs to figure out, this first inning thing, if you're a longtime Braves fan, you remember folks saying similar things about Tom Glavine, and all Tom Glavine did was put together a Hall of Fame career. First inning, be damned. He was able to figure it out, and Chris Sale certainly has figured out a lot over the course of his career as well. This was Jorge Soler's re-debut with the Braves. That's what I'm calling it. 0 for 3 with a walk. He's going to be the leadoff man going forward, Jake, and I think that's exactly what he was brought in here to do. He's had to get that old outfield glove out so that he was able to play the field for the first time this year. But Soler, obviously very excited. He spoke with the press before the game. Thrilled to be back. It It's just one of those things where I feel like it's a natural fit for the Braves, both in reacquiring this player and plugging him in pretty much exactly where he was when last we saw him in an Atlanta uniform.
It is a good fit for what he does and the fact that he can get on base, and that's exactly what you're looking for. And he did that. He got a walk today. We didn't get that hit from him yet, but he also has that big power, but just his ability to get on base, which he's done almost 37% of the time since the beginning of June, is going to be really good, especially as we talked about with Olson. If he gets going and having Riley and Ozuna batting behind him, it's going to be very good for this offense. And look, the baseball finds you, Grant. You put him out there in right field, he gets 2 outs in the first inning. So look, as long as you can get out there and just catch the baseball, make the routine plays, and just get on base at the top of the order. Alex Anthopoulos was talking during the broadcast, maybe he does have more speed maybe than people think once he gets going, but I'm not expecting Gold Glove defense from him out there. But obviously what he's brought over to do is set the table at the top of this order, kind of bring Acuna light. He doesn't have that speed to steal bases, but he does have that power and he does have that on-base ability.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the Braves are needing out of that spot. Somebody with some consistent ability to get on base. It has not happened at the clip or the consistency that it's needed to since Ronald went down in late May, and hopefully Jorge Soler is the solution for what has been ailing the Braves in the leadoff spot. We got a lot more to get to on the Braves postcast as we continue on. We'll talk a little bit more about Chris Sale's start, and of course, we'll be looking ahead to the stretch of games ahead for the Braves as they return to Truist Park. All of that is coming your way as the Braves postcast continues. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. So download the app today. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy with Prize Picks. Well, Jake, let's take a look at the line score, the box score for this game, as well as the Braves played their 107th game. They improved to 58-49 with their victory, 6 runs on 8 hits, no errors for Atlanta, 7 men left on base. Brewers, 2 runs, 8 hits, same number as the Braves. Couple of errors for them in this game as well. They left 9 men on base. The winning pitcher was Pierce Johnson in relief for the Braves. Koenig takes the loss for the Milwaukee Brewers. No save in the game as Atlanta again improves to 9 games over 500. They do that on the strength of 4 home runs, all of them by Matt Olson and Travis d'Arnaud, and each of those sets of home runs back to back for those 2 guys. We talked about the history they made already. Some pretty interesting, pretty cool stuff for these guys as well. Looking at the up and down this lineup, and then we'll kind of get back to Chris Sale and the things that he has been doing so well. It really seems like for the Braves, it's going to be about the consistency up and down the order. You get the walk from Soler, Riley with a big hit we'll talk about soon, Olson, d'Arnaud get into the act. Eddie Rosario found his way on base. Orlando Arcia, 11-game hitting streak. Jared Kelenic also was able to get on and score a run. And Whit Merrifield, who we'll talk about a little bit later, he was on base twice as he takes over at second base for the Braves for the foreseeable future. You just want to see that consistency. You want to see everybody chipping in. And, Jake, I think we saw a lot of that today.
And we saw 14 hits in the game yesterday. We saw 8 hits in the game today. And that's really, like we talk about all the time. You want to see contributions up and down the order and guys get on base. And you really want to see that bottom of the lineup. That's what we were talking about the trade deadline. You weren't really looking to get that huge bat. You do in Soler and you put him in the leadoff spot. But what that does is it lengthens your lineup. And now you look at the bottom and Arcia, who's starting to turn things around and has a big hitting streak going. You look at Jared Kelenic, who was your leadoff hitter. And then you look at a guy Whit Merrifield, who, has the ability to handle the bat and get on base. And now all of a sudden you have some length in your lineup. And especially, once you get a Michael Harris back, it's just going to make it even deeper. So, that's really what you're hoping for out of this Braves lineup. Again, we talk about all the time. You can't compare it to 2023 anymore. It's just not that. But even this version, I think there's enough talent and skill up and down the lineup to continually put pressure on the other team. And we've seen that here, in these last couple of games.
We definitely have, and that's just what you need from this club is to have multiple threats, to have that lengthened lineup you mentioned. I mean, that's the one thing that Jorge Soler really does. And while you might think getting a hitter like that, who has the home run ability that he does, that leadoff is a really weird place to put him because he is not like Ronald Acuna Jr. He's not going to join the 40-70 club anytime soon, but the on-base skills are what the Braves need. And then all these other pieces, we talked about this before the trade deadline as well. It's great to go get Soler or any hitter that you could bring in, even throwing Whit Merrifield into this mix. But there are certain guys in the lineup you need to see start clicking. We talked a lot about Matt Olson. You just brought up Orlando Arcia. It's just good to have guys up and down the order feeling a little bit more like themselves and chipping in when they need to, because you're not going to get everybody hot at the same time. Looking at Chris Sale's start, 5 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, both of them earned, 3 walks for him, and 6 strikeouts. The early runs, all Milwaukee was able to get against him. Pierce Johnson, that's a guy I don't know that we talk about enough because it just seems like he comes in and he's been so reliable. But what a great piece of the bullpen mix in the high leverage spots Pierce Johnson has been. It doesn't matter if it's the 6th, 7th, or 8th inning. This is a guy or extras that you can count on to come in and miss bats and give you a quality appearance.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's kind of an underrated part of this bullpen. And looking at ERA numbers just for relievers cannot always be the best determination of how good they are, but a 2.78 ERA for Pierce Johnson, a 2.30 ERA for Joe Jimenez, a 1.77 ERA for Raisel Iglesias. I mean, again, we talked about this at the trade deadline. It really, took away the necessity to go out and get a bullpen arm. While all these contenders are looking for bullpen arms at the deadline, didn't really feel like you needed to do that with this Braves bullpen. And you can't obviously predict health, but what they've gotten from these three, and obviously you add Minter into the mix as well, has really been a strong point of this Braves team. And Pierce Johnson, to be able to come in, get out of that 6th inning, come back out for the 7th, and get it done as well. He's been an underrated part of this bullpen.
And Pierce Johnson, one of several Braves relievers that you go look at that StatCast page and you see the percentiles that he is in, and you can tell why he's having the success that he is. Joe Jimenez is another one of those guys that you mentioned, who we also saw on this day. A couple of strikeouts for Joe. Braves pitchers piling up 12 punch-outs in this game. Talked about Chris Sale and if you don't get him early, you may not get him at all. But overall, I mean, as you look at where the Braves have been this year with their pitching staff, which has been far and away, I think, one of the best in baseball and better than you could have possibly expected, especially with the caveat that you haven't had Spencer Strider after his first 2 starts of the year. Chris Sale has been the guy that has come in and stepped up the most. I don't know that it's surprising considering that his resume is Hall of Fame worthy if he stayed healthy, but this is everything that the Braves needed, and Sale continues to deliver every 5th or 6th day, depending on when the Braves make that call on him.
Yeah, and he's been great. Like you said, I don't think you could say it's completely unexpected because of what he's done in the past, but he just hasn't done it for so long because he hasn't been healthy. So a lot of people are starting to question that, but clearly he's answered that. And look, he pitches 5 2/3 innings. He gives up 6 hits. He does walk 3, and he's walked a little bit more lately, at least by his standards. Still not a ton or anything worrisome. And I think one of those was an intentional situation. Yeah. But 1 hard hit on the day. He only allowed 1 ball to be hit over 95 miles per hour. I mean, that is just – it's incredible what he has done this season. And again, he is squarely in that NL Cy Young conversation. Last time I looked on FanDuel, he was the favorite to win the NL Cy Young. So it's just been an incredible story for Chris Sale and what he's given this team each time out there. And hopefully it continues because it's been just an incredible ride watching Chris Sale, watching the comeback for him. So just really love it. Every time he goes out there, he's giving this team a chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, he has been an absolute joy to watch, and he has given the Braves some great performances every single time, just about, save 1 or 2 clunkers, really only one that I can think of that has Chris Sale just not been able to go out there, compete, and keep the Braves in a baseball game. Matt Olson, we talked about the couple of home runs. He also walked, so he was on base 3 times in this game. Maybe not all the way back yet, but it does feel like on this road trip in particular, he's starting to get there. Austin Riley had a big 2-run single in this one. Now, all of a sudden, like you add Jorge Soler to this mix like we talked about, you've got Riley clicking. If Olson's back and Ozuna's doing what he's doing, I mean, Brian Snitker talked about this when he was asked, like, what do you foresee in your lineup with Soler, and saying that he's going to go back to the leadoff spot. You get that group going, that's a pretty tough ride if you're trying to get through, those 4 guys, and then think about maybe adding Ozzie Albies back into that mix in a month or 5 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, and Michael Harris, hopefully here in a couple of weeks. And you got to consider that catching duo right now and what they're doing. Look, I've not always agreed with the 50-50 split, but right now they both seem to be thriving it and feeding off one another. So, now even with what you have at the moment, that's pretty five deep that you have at the top of your order. That looks very scary. And now it takes some of the pressure off those guys at the bottom of the order who are starting to pick things up as well. So this is getting back again to that lineup that can give you some length and can really, up and down the order have an impact. But the Austin Riley 2-out hit, that was to me, I know you got the 2 home runs from Olson and d'Arnaud later in the game, but that, to even the score up there against Freddie Peralta, who's a really good pitcher and was throwing the ball pretty well, to get that 2-out hit there from Austin Riley to drive in those 2 runs to tie it up. I thought that was one of the key moments of the game for him to be able to get that contact and sneak it through the hole. Left side of the defense was pretty rough in this one, helped the Braves out a little bit. But again, just great to see that for Austin Riley. We need more of those. And again, we need those guys to step up when they have players on base and have those opportunities. It just becomes so much important for them to come through in those situations.
Yeah, Riley's hit, actually the go-ahead hit as the back-to-back homers, the first 2 had tied the game up. But to your point, I mean, these are the moments and the times where you need Austin Riley to deliver, and he has been doing that, especially since about the middle of June. He's looked a lot more like the Austin Riley that was expected and the Austin Riley that he expected to be. Got a lot more to talk about. We're going to turn our attention, of course, to what's ahead for the Braves when we return. We'll get some odds and ends, though, out of this series win over the Brewers, this winning road trip that the Braves just turned in. That comes your way next on the Braves Postcast. Get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trades. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping coast to coast. Need help on an order? Get expert staff with industry-leading service, and friendliest folks in the business are there to talk to you, and you get to talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Well, Jake, the Braves and Brewers wrapped up their series, so they are going to see each other again on the upcoming homestand. As Atlanta was closing this thing out and Jorge Soler joined the club, Luke Jackson obviously came over. We saw that Darius Vines was designated for assignment to clear 1 spot on the 40-man roster, but as far as an active spot, it was Nacho Alvarez who was optioned back to AAA Gwinnett. Whit Merrifield's going to get some time at second base. He was on base a couple of times in this win over the Brewers in the finale. Merrifield, I think, has just been looking for some regular playing time, so we'll see if he benefits from that. I liked giving Nacho Alvarez a shot. I felt like it was worth it for the Braves to get that, just see if he could provide a little something in the absence of Ozzie Albies. I think we're going to be seeing this kid again, and maybe this first little taste of the big leagues will give him some valuable experience, not just to take back with him to Gwinnett, but for that next time that his name gets called.
He was the best option at the time for somebody that could come in and hold down the position for a while until Ozzie came back. He was hot at Gwinnett. He has, at least we've seen at the minor league level, the good back-to-ball skills, but just didn't translate for him right now. But he obviously is very young. He'll go back, as you said, take what he's learned here, and I think we'll see him again at some point. Could very well be the beginning of next year. I think he comes into next year trying to compete for a job. But for Whit Merrifield, I'm excited to see what he can do as well, because this is a guy in the offseason that I wanted the Braves to go after more as kind of a bench backup type of player. But now you get him in a spot where, as you said, can play every day, something he hasn't been able to do a lot this year. And a veteran guy, obviously very smart player. They talked about it today, very good defensively up over there at second base, which he feels is his more comfortable position or where he's more comfortable. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, bring some speed element to the bottom of that order to get on for those guys at the top. So another chance here for Whit Merrifield, like you said, just having that good depth. And I think that's another reason maybe why the Braves didn't feel like they needed to go out and find somebody for that spot. I think they believe that Whit Merrifield can be that guy to hold things down until Ozzie returns.
Yeah, of course, he had that freak injury, taking some ground balls when he first signed with the Braves and had to get some stitches. Those are out now. Obviously, he was back in there, able to pick up a base hit, steal a bag, do some things at the bottom of the order that can be helpful. And when you think about no Ronald Acuna Jr., no Michael Harris, I mean, where is the speed in the Braves lineup right now? That's a trick question. it's nowhere because it's just not happening. But you bring
Eddie Rosario stole a base today.
Now, that is true, but I think Eddie Rosario is the guy who uses his wits to steal his bases rather than his blazing speed. But maybe that's a discussion for another time. But they do need to have a few guys that can do it, especially at times in which it really could help the club out. And Merrifield could be one of those guys, whether he's starting or coming in off the bench as well. Just a nice little weapon to have. And the Phillies gave him $8 million to sign with them and really didn't seem to have a plan to play him. So I'm sure he's highly motivated to get as much playing time as he can and make an impression here in Atlanta over the next, 6-8 weeks and longer as far as the postseason is concerned, which we will talk about when it gets here. That all aside, the trade deadline was kind of a garage sale for the Marlins. It pretty much is every year, it feels like. They have done some buying in the past, the not too recent past, but they were doing nothing but selling here lately, traded away multiple pieces. Atlanta's got to take advantage of the series, Jake. The Phillies, they've been sliding lately. They have lost 7 out of 10. Is the division possible is a question that some folks could ask themselves at 6.5 games out. Here, as we turn the calendar to the month of August, I can tell you, stranger things have happened. But for the Braves, I think that more than anything, they just need to concentrate on playing consistent baseball, and I think that's what their main objective is.
It's got to be their main objective. It's even with this, we're talking about winning 4 out of 5. We're not even talking about, a week too long streak. We need to see this team really start playing some consistent baseball, even in this streak. You had an ugly game on Monday, and then before it started, you had the 2 ugly games in New York. So we need to see this team be able to play, and you're not going to play clean baseball every night. I get that, but more consistently, we need to see this team putting together a good game each and every night, going out and winning series like they did in this one, and doing that on a consistent basis. But there is a little window here because the Phillies going out on a really tough West Coast trip. The Braves got a couple of teams coming up. They got the series against the Marlins. Who knows who they're facing in that one? And then you got a series against the Rockies. So, if they are going to get back into it, this feels like the stretch where it could potentially happen. But even go back to 2022, and I did look at the end of July, the Braves were just 3 games back of the Mets in that and had to fight tooth and nail just to win it in the second to last day of the season. So I believe it's still a big, an uphill climb. But like you said, I think more importantly, this team just needs to focus on itself. They do that, play clean baseball. Everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, there were quite a few weird chapters in that 22 season as well, because it seemed like just about the time the Braves started to pull within a manageable deficit, the Mets went ahead and pushed them back away. And then, of course, there was that furious finish. So, again, stranger things have happened. But as for Atlanta's main focus right now, it's as we talked about, just finding a way to find some consistency at the plate would go a long way towards accomplishing just about anything that they have set their mind to. We don't know what the full weekend's probables are going to be. It's Charlie Morton and Spencer Schwellenbach in Thursday and Friday's game, but it could be Max Fried, Ronaldo Lopez, and the other 2. We're going to see how that all works. But, Jake, when we talked about these guys possibly facing some serious injury, of course, imaging done, forearm, elbow inflammation, whatever the case was going to be, we weren't sure with Ronaldo Lopez, but a clean MRI makes you feel a lot better. Sounds like he may not even go on the IL and could make this start. That's a much better scenario than we were thinking about, both with the post-All-Star news for Max Fried initially, and, of course, with this injury scare for Ronaldo. And I think that's one thing that the Braves can maybe breathe a sigh of relief in, not having to go out and try to replace not 1 but 2 starting pitchers at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and 2 of the guys that have really, helped get you here this year that have been top of the rotation type of pitcher. You're talking about the NL ERA leader for the most of the season. So, that would be some big losses. And again, not quite out of the woods yet. You got to see them get back and stay healthy, but it sounds like both of them could be nearing a return. Based on what Alex Anthopoulos said during the broadcast today, it kind of sounded more like Max Fried will definitely get a chance this weekend. Ronaldo Lopez, they may decide to give him a little bit more rest. And, that's what you would want to do. But with the way that things are, that we talked about the division, the Braves are still much closer to losing a postseason spot than they are winning the division. So there's a lot to play for here. And you obviously want your best guys out there. But if not Lopez, maybe Grant Holmes gets another opportunity. Yep. We'll see. But glad to have those guys. And whether it's this weekend, it sounds like it's going to be very, very soon that we get Fried and Lopez back on the mound.
Yeah, and the Braves are happy to have those as possibilities rather than wondering how long they're going to be without 2 of their best starting pitchers. Braves are 30-21 this season at Truist Park. They're just 28-28 away from home. 4 games against the Marlins, off on Monday, then 3 more games against the Milwaukee Brewers, who we just saw. Then that 10-game road trip you mentioned. Colorado you can throw in there. That's a weird place. We'll talk about it later on. But, man, sometimes you just go into Coors Field and strange things happen. But The Braves, they've got to worry about 2 other teams before we get there. Game 1 of 3, Charlie Morton, 5-6, a 4.16 ERA, looking to put one of his most forgettable starts in a Braves uniform behind him as he was bombed by the New York Mets last time out. And Max Meyer is going to be on the mound for the Marlins. He's 2-0 with an ERA of 3. I guess they've run out of people to option him back to the minors for at this point after all their trades.
Yeah, and Max Meyer, obviously, Braves fans know he dominated the Braves earlier in the season. So hopefully that's not the case this time around. And sometimes you never know. A team like this that trades off everybody, you got a bunch of young kids that are trying to, show that they deserve a spot at the big league level. Sometimes, teams can rally around that. Obviously, talent-wise, experience-wise, the Braves are going to have a huge edge in this series. But, don't count those kids out over there. They are playing for their future jobs. So, and they won a game on Wednesday against the Rays, who also traded everybody off. So again, on paper, it looks like a good matchup, but got to get it done on the field.
Yeah, they tell me somebody's got to win every night. I mean, there haven't been too many ties in baseball in recent memory, and hopefully none in the not too distant future, because that wouldn't help really anybody out. Be that as it may, the Braves and the Marlins open up their series Thursday, 7:20 p.m. Eastern Time. First pitch at Truist Park. Charlie Morton and Max Meyer are the pitchers for that game. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Leave us those likes and comments. Share the show with a friend. We appreciate all of that, and we look forward to catching up with you very soon. Again, the Braves take 2 out of 3 from the Brewers. They have a winning road trip as they come home for a 7-game homestand. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time, and until then, so long, everyone.